Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CineSmack. I'm your host and referee, Mike Keeler, and joining me are four very good friends and very good filmmakers: Sam Twomey.
Hello.
Tom Haggis.
Howdy, partners.
Mark Johnson.
Howdy, everybody.
And Gabe Rowald.
I can't top that.
Good evening, gents. How are you?
Great.
Good.
All right. Well, should we tell everyone what tonight's episode is about? If they didn't read the description and they just downloaded us blindly.
Let's do it.
All right. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, this bout is scheduled for one fall. In the first corner, released in 2010, directed by Joel and Ethan Cohen, starring Jeff Bridges, Haley Steinfeld, and Matt Damon. In the second corner, released in 1969, directed by Henry Hathaway, starring John Wayne, Kim Darby, and Glenn Campbell. It's the Duke versus the Dude in a clash of grit. True grit.
All right. There you go.
Wow, that's a lot to live up to.
You have no idea how hard it was to find like that many people for Ron to perform that in front of. This was also our very first CineSmack outing. We actually, all five of us, got together and went and saw a movie. That was a lot of fun. We went and saw the John Wayne version. No.
in its original,
in its original
theatrical release.
Yep, that's right.
Yes.
No, so what should we start out with tonight, guys? Should we start? Should we go ahead and start out with writing, maybe? Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
All right. Let's go with writing. And I'm gonna pick Gabe.
Oh boy. Well, like our first episode, we've got movies based on novels. The original work is actually a novel, and apparently, I haven't read it, but apparently it's also a very well-regarded novel. But I felt like actually the writing on both of them was pretty strong. It was pretty good in both movies. Although I think in the end, I liked the 2010 version. I like the writing in that one a little bit better.
Okay. All right. The novel came out in 1968, and a year later they made the 69 version. Like, the novel came out, they got the rights, they made the movie, and it came out in 69. So it was a pretty quick turnover on that. And there's a lot of trivia surrounding, the original movie. Not as much with the new one, but with the original, like, some of you guys might have noticed John Wayne wore his eye patch on the left eye, and Jeff Bridges wore his on the right, and John Wayne wore his on the left as an homage to John Ford, which some say is probably his best friend in the entire world, and also the man that made John Wayne a star, the director. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Do you know if it was specified in the novel which eye that Rooster Cogburn wore the eye patch over?
I do not. Did any of you guys get a chance to read it before we did this?
I did not.
I didn't go to that length, I'm afraid.
I collected kind of a list of the differences between the two in the book. And as far as I can tell, it just said he had one eye, not really which one it was.
Okay.
So.
All right. So, Mark, what are your feelings about the writing?
But before I get into it too much, what's our policy on spoilers? Because I feel like the endings of these two movies were a little bit different, and I didn't want to ruin the film. Do we?
I would say
spoiler alert, or do we ignore it altogether, or what do you think?
I would say, could you keep it down to a minimum? Like, could you say spoiler alert and maybe not give away too much? Is that possible for you to describe it that way, or should we just say?
I think we're going to run into problems with that.
Right. Okay. Then let's just go ahead and say it now. You guys are listening to a film podcast where we need to talk about every aspect of the film. If you've seen them, great. If you haven't seen them and you don't mind if we kind of ruin a few things for you before you watch them, then that's fine. But from now on, going forth in all the episodes, there's going to be spoilers. It's going to be one giant spoiler alert. How's that?
That'll work.
All right. Then go ahead, Mark. Spoil away.
Okay. I'm with Gabe in that the writing was very strong for both films, and many scenes were virtually line for line, written exactly the same. Like the courtroom scene. I mean, I could almost mouth the words as John Wayne was saying it. Like, I watched the '69 version second, and I can almost say the lines before John Wayne said them. So the screenplays are very similar, but there's some differences too that kind of puzzled me and made me question how the writers wanted the film versions to end. And since I don't know the source material, I don't know how the book ended. It kind of makes me wonder, like which writers kind of went off the path or when it took it a different direction. And in the 2010 True Grit, it appears Rooster Cogburn had left and joined the circus or something, like he was part of an act.
Right, kind of like a Wild West show almost.
Right. And I thought that was kind of goofy for this character. I guess I kind of imagined him, dying in some heroic, gunfight or something like that. And the '69 version ends with him riding off, and they do this really poor still frame slow motion shot of him, which is blurry, that they run the credits over.
Yeah.
It creates the perception that he goes on to bring in the next crook or criminal or whatever. Like he's gonna go on and have other adventures. And from what I understand, there was a sequel to the original True Grit.
Yep. Rooster Cogburn.
And that sets that up nicely. And I kind of preferred that over the choice the Coen brothers made in having the sort of the Matty Ross going to sort of pay tribute to him or come visit him at the end. I like the '69 ending better.
Any other?
I guess the other thing I liked about the '69 version is that it opened with Matty Ross's father leaving home with Cheney, and you sort of saw this sort of perfect life that was of Matty Ross's that was destroyed by Cheney, and and the Coen brothers completely ignored that. We don't see Cheney until 2/3 of the way through the film, and I thought that was kind of a puzzling and interesting choice as well.
Right. Okay. Sam.
Well, you made a lot of good points, Mark. One thing that really struck me watching, I watched the 2010 version first, which I know a couple of you guys did as well. When I watched the original version and I saw their opening, I think, since we're talking about writing, I really prefer the approach of the 2010 version. And the reason why I do is because, in a lot of ways, by omitting those scenes with the father at the beginning, the story becomes more about the girl, from the beginning all the way till the end. And with the Coen Brothers version, when we start with her voiceover, the story is hers, and we can only imagine what happened to her father through her eyes. But by omitting those 10 minutes or so, it changes the focus of the story, in my opinion, to make the girl the lead character. And in some ways, at the end, the first one ended, it was focused more on the John Wayne character. But with this new focus on the girl and the new ending from the Coen brothers, I really kind of liked the story set more around her. It really kind of made her more the star, at least in my eyes. Rooster Cogburn was more of a supporting character.
All right. Tom?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Sam on that. It seems like when you go to the writing, you're going to talk about the beginning and the end. Everything in the middle, getting from point A to point B is pretty close to being the same. I mean, that stuff you're going to chalk up later on to acting. But the beginning and the end, I think the Coen brothers definitely went in a direction that made it Maddie's story. and not Roosters, which I mean I'm sure was very tempting to do back when you had John Wayne in your cast, but the ending in the new one I preferred also because I thought it was more fitting, and it concluded the story with her side of it.
Okay. Not a lot of people know this, but there's actually a third movie. John Wayne's not in it, but it's called what is it? I'm trying to think of it. Because there's Rooster Cogburn. Well, there's True Grit, then Rooster Cogburn, and then I think it's More Grit or sorry guys, I'm trying to look it up here. And I can't find it. Oh, A True Grit, A Further Adventure is made in 1978. So, what, 10 years later? 9 years later? And 3 years after Rooster Cogburn. So, let me ask you guys. Do you think the reason the 1969 version is so different than the 2010 version is, do you think they were eyeing sequels then? Do you think that, well, why would they change the ending? I mean, what do you guys think?
I don't know if it's so much as setting up sequels, but I think back then, I mean, John Wayne's a star. He's the star of the film, and I think I haven't seen a lot of John Wayne movies, maybe not as much as other people have, but when you see a John Wayne movie, you want to go see the Duke on screen do his thing. And I don't know if audiences back then would have reacted very well if they centered the story more around the girl and have Rooster Cogburn be sort of a secondary character. I mean, I guess I don't know how audiences back in the late 60s would react, but I guess I see it more as them pumping up the star power.
Okay.
Well, I think you're right, Mark, and it is important to think about how the audiences would have responded to these different films at the time. I think the character of the girl in the 60s version, she was a little sassy and a little bit different, but at the same time, the focus traditionally was more on the adult characters, and the children's roles, so to speak, weren't nearly as meaty or juicy because children, in some ways, didn't hold as much freedom, or people don't think about them as as complex characters as they do today, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the thing that was interesting, that it was kind of like in the old one, it was Maddie was kind of the straight guy to John Wayne's foil, and it really did, like we said before, it really kind of made it John Wayne's story, Rooster's story, not Maddie's story, which is what made the novel so endearing to so many people, was that it was told from the viewpoint of this girl looking back on her life. And then, John Wayne kind of muscled in and took over that.
Do you think he had say-so over the fact that they don't show him die? Because in everything that I've tried to look up, I on trivia and everything else about it, nothing's mentioned about that. Like that he read the first script from a blacklisted writer.
Right.
And fell in love with it and said, we need to make this film.
Right. Well, I don't know if he had say over whether or not, what happened to Rooster Cogburn's character at the end, but I did read something that said he was telling the crew, this is my show, step aside. So he definitely had a lot of power at that time and was definitely kind of taking control of that character and in on some level taking control of that production as well. So I'm sure he had a large influence on that. I'm not sure, how much decision he, had on the ending, but he definitely had some input.
Okay. Now, the reason I bring up the fact that, what if they changed it for John Wayne is, a lot of times people really get into certain actors. Like there's been stories of when Jackie Chan was rumored to have gotten married, there were people actually committing suicide or threatening to harm themselves because Jackie Chan was getting married and not to them. And John Wayne is, I mean, he's the American actor at the time. He is America, and maybe they didn't want to, kill him off or whatnot. I guess I don't know. I haven't read anything else, but the fact is, John Wayne doesn't die in very many movies. He died in The Shootist. He died in The Cowboys, Alamo, Sands of Iwo Jima, and then a lot of his earlier films he died in, before he was big name. But once he was big name, they really didn't kill him off that much. Just because, I don't know, I guess I look at it as in sometimes these people, get this feeling like, okay, we can't do that because it's John Wayne, or we can't do that because it's, so-and-so. That's just my opinion now.
So you feel like his fans had come to expect a certain thing from him and his characters,
right?
That they couldn't do anything different. There was no leeway to challenge that.
Right, exactly. Like, I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have run into this, but I have. I've run into it with two people that I know where I've said, "Oh, I went and saw True Grit. It was great," and they just shook their heads, said, "No, I will not go see that movie." Like,
really?
Have you guys run into that?
No, my mother is a huge John Wayne fan. She loves John Wayne, but I think she's actually interested in seeing the new one. I think she's interested in seeing how it differs and doing,
right.
Maybe something on a more informal level, like what we're doing, comparing and contrasting the two.
Right. Tom, Mark, Sam, have you guys run into anyone like that at all?
Not really. And kind of, hobnobbing around the internet and talking to people. Obviously, there's people on there that, they think the new one is trash, and they call it the Hollywood version. But I mean, when I put the two of them next to each other, the John Wayne one comes off as the Hollywood one. That's the one that has the happy ending with him riding off into the sunset, with the girl saying funny things like, "I won't rest until Tom Chaney is barking in hell." I'm waiting for everything except like a wink at the camera, So, and no offense to Kim Darby, she did a pretty good job, but I just don't think it was. We'll talk about this more when we get to the final thing, but it just it was. I think that True Grit, the new one, is just more true to the heart of what the novel was about and what Western movies in general are about.
Right.
Yeah, I can agree. I got that feeling too, that the John Wayne version was very Hollywood and almost kind of campy at times. And the music, the music always seemed to be kind of upbeat, even in tense situations. The music was kind of upbeat. I almost got kind of like an old TV show vibe from it at times.
Now, the same guy that did the music for this did the Magnificent Seven theme. Like, his name's Elmer Bernstein, and he's done a slew of movies, but he's most well known for like the Magnificent Seven.
Right, and I did realize there was a recognizable theme that showed up later in the John Wayne version that I didn't realize was from True Grit. But like they start playing, I'm like, that I recognize that.
Right.
I've heard that before. I just didn't realize it was from that movie. But at times, like when the movie first started, well, as long as we're on the topic, just briefly. Speaking of the music, the John Wayne version had that kind of cheesy opening song.
Oh, right.
By Glenn Campbell. I was like, oh my god. I hope it's not like this the whole way through.
Well, the only reason Glenn Campbell got the role was because of the song. So they could, he would sing the lead song. That would get them radio time, which would get people to want to see the movie. Originally cast in the part, who they wanted was Elvis.
Oh boy.
They wanted
Wow.
They wanted Elvis, but Elvis wanted top billing. And they're like, nope,
Over
sorry. So
John Wayne?
Yes.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, so they went with Glenn Campbell, and the director later came out and said that Glenn Campbell's performance was, he hated it. He hated everything about his performance in the film.
Oh yeah, Elvis would have been better.
Yeah, I felt like actually when LaBeef's character showed up, as portrayed by Glenn Campbell, he kind of gave me the creeps.
Yeah.
He was kind of creepy.
Well, if you want the creeps, you can go down to Branson in Missouri and
yeah, I know.
watch him
he's still
perform up
kicking.
there. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I hope he's not listening. I was just saying his character gave me the creeps.
All right. Well, should we go ahead and sound off on who we're picking for this round? Let's start with
Yeah.
Sam.
I'd have to go with the 2010 version.
All right. Tom.
2010.
Mark.
I'm going to go 69.
All right. Gabe.
Yeah, I feel like the writing was strong in both, but I would give the edge to the 2010 as well.
All right. All right. Let's move on to. Oh my goodness!
Oh no! Let's move on to Ron.
Easy, Ron. Calm down. Calm
Gotta
down.
save
Ron.
us some time.
Since we've talked a lot about it, let's go with acting. We'll start with you, Mark.
Oh boy. Who would start with me? I have to say, I watched the 2010 first. I was watching the 1969 version. I was sort of like compilating my own like True Grit All Stars. Like if I were making the movie myself and picking actors from each film to cast in it, I was kind of looking at the acting from that angle. And honestly, I have to say I like, in terms of the Duke versus the Dude, which I'm sure everyone's probably going to touch on, I really like John Wayne's performance over Jeff Bridges. When we were in the theater and he was delivering the lines about, like he always goes backwards when he's backing up or whatever, that really got a reaction in the audience we were in, and that just kind of fell flat with me. But when John Wayne says it, it cracked me up for some reason. I can't explain that or describe why that's the case, but the things the Duke said hit home more than what Jeff Bridges delivered in the movie. And I don't know how much we want to get into like sort of the peripheral characters, but I really liked and it was an Oscar-winning performance by John Wayne.
Yes.
And I don't know. I guess I preferred John Wayne over Jeff Bridges.
I believe it was his only Oscar too.
Yeah.
I believe so too.
Yep. Let's go ahead. We'll go to Tom.
Oh, good. I'm going to go complete opposite with what Mark said. I thought that a lot of people have been using the word campy for the True Grit, the older one, and that's kind of where I saw it. It was just really insufferable, the way that they were acting, and I couldn't believe that John Wayne had won an Oscar for it because but then I kind of realized that it was more of kind of a tokens, like, oh yes, we all love John Wayne, here's your Oscar, please go away. And again, and Kim Darby acted like she was on a high school stage with a lot of her lines, and whereas I thought the acting in the new one was it was, well, I mean, for lack of a better word, it was gritty. One of the things that one of the things I noticed is that Jeff Bridges, when you took that one eye away from him, he used that other eye like it was doing the work of two eyes. It was sitting there scanning. I mean, I'm serious, and it was checking people out, and it was constantly analyzing the situation, regardless of how drunk he was in a given scene. And what's so great about Rooster Cogburn is that the grittier he is, the more amazing the end of the story is. That you see that he really is a great guy, in spite of all of his faults. Yeah. And with the John Wayne thing, the first time you see him, you're like, oh yeah, he's going to save the day. And there really wasn't a big surprise there. But I don't think there was a single actor in the old one that I thought trumped the new one. They were all. I definitely preferred the new one as far as the acting is concerned.
Okay, well, before we go on to the other two, it's reported John Wayne was disappointed by the casting of Kim Darby. He was actually trying to get one of the Carpenter girls to play. Sally Field was up for the part. Sandra Locke. Who else? It was Karen Carpenter was actually up for the film, and he said he said that the two hardly spoke off camera. He later said, "Christ, talk about having no chemistry with your leading lady. She was the goddamn lousiest actress I ever worked with."
But even with those choices, those other choices that he had, again, it was as if he was picking out an accessory for the character.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas the Coen brothers said, we need to find a girl that can carry this movie, and I think Haley definitely did that. I'll be surprised if she doesn't get a nomination for this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's go to Gabe.
Yeah, I have to agree with Tom. I feel like the acting was just so much stronger, so much more believable in the 2010 version. And, if you think about how iconic a performance the John Wayne performance was, and how Jeff Bridges took that character and made it his own, you have to give him a lot of credit for that, for being able to overcome, such an iconic performance. Right. And I just really think he did. He took that character, he became that character, and he just really made it his own. And I don't know what they did with the eye patch in this one, but the special features on the 69 version talk about how the John Wayne's eye patch actually basically had a hole in it. He could actually see through it. So he could see with both eyes all the time.
But I felt like that when I was watching it.
Yeah, but now I don't know if they did that for Jeff Bridges, but like you said, with his performances, it's almost like I wouldn't be surprised if he wore that eye patch long before he started acting in that movie, to get used to it, to have that, have that become part of that character and have it seem natural, like he really has to wear this eye patch. So I wouldn't be surprised if he couldn't see through the eye patch and actually had to use the one eye all the time while he was acting. And I think the performances in the 2010 version all around are just great. The girl is spectacular. She was just so good. Her delivery of the lines was so much more natural. I just thought she was stellar. And, Matt Damon's good. Just everybody just was so strong. But I do have one thing that bothers me about young characters like that, is I always wonder, can a young person like that really be so witty and so bright and so quick? I think of Juno. I really liked that movie. I really liked Ellen Page's character. I really liked her acting. But the whole time I was questioning, could a young person like that really be that bright and understand the world that well and be that quick-witted? And that's the only thing that bothers me a little bit about it, is that on a certain level, it's unbelievable for a character of that age to be able to do that. Okay. But her performance was stellar.
All right, Sam?
Well, there's a lot of differences, different styles. I mean, if you think back to the late 1960s and what the audiences were craving, and just the general overall delivery style of the actors at the time, in a way, it's kind of strange for me to have watched 2010 first and then go back to the other one, because in some ways I was so blown away by the performances that I saw in the 2010 version, and then looking at the differences from both acting and casting. The girl character was much younger in the 2010 version than in the 1969 version, but because it was her story, and the strength of that casting and that performance really held it all together. And I think I never questioned. I wanted to believe that there was a girl or someone that had that kind of smarts back then. I think the willful suspension of disbelief. I wanted to believe it. I never questioned it even for a second. When most people talk about acting between the two, of course, there's going to be the comparison between John Wayne and Jeff Bridges. John Wayne has always had this kind of modern audiences, if they haven't seen a lot of his work, will continue to talk about, how much of an actor that John Wayne really was. A lot of people say that he was really kind of a tough hombre, and that's what he did. He just kind of read the lines in the same kind of a characterization. But I think when I watched the 2010 version, I saw a real performance from Jeff Bridges. I had never seen a lot of John Wayne movies, and to be very frank about it, his performance didn't really do that much for me. I think he did come across to me as kind of a cartoony, macho version of himself, with the swagger and the molasses drawl, and I didn't see much of a performance there. I didn't see a lot of specific choices that made that performance. I think the acting in the 2010 version really had a lot more depth to it, and possibly because the directors, which we'll get to later in directing, are really focused on characters. That's one of their key things that makes a Coen Brothers film, is their focus on the individual beats of those characters and bringing those to life, as opposed to painting with a very broad strokes and letting the largeness of the story come across as it did in the 1969 version. But I think the 2010 version has all those great performances, and it's also accompanied by some great cinematography and just a very unique look. I'd have to say the 2010 totally for the acting. One thing that is different toward the end when John Wayne talks about fill your hands, you son of a bitch. There's no way to recreate that in the 2010 version, because imagine back in the 1969 audiences, here's this Mr. Americana guy. In a way, it's kind of shocky and edging to have him say an epitaph like that on the big screen, when it really turns out that his character was the real son of a bitch. But I don't know. I think hands down, I have to give the acting to the 2010 version.
Sam, right. I want to real quick, if I can follow up on something that Sam said. I haven't seen a ton of John Wayne stuff, but I've seen some of his more notable roles, particularly The Shootist and The Searchers, and The Searchers in particular. He was amazing in that movie. I mean, John Wayne was a very, very good actor, but I have to say that in True Grit, it seems like he was kind of phoning it in. That Searchers was 13 years before True Grit, and it was 13 years of doing westerns. It seems like this was just another cog in the wheel for him, and I didn't. I was really disappointed, because I was like, oh, this is the one that John Wayne won his Oscar for, and when I finally sat down and watched it, I was like, yeah, that the Oscar must have been for something else.
Right.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing as Tom. In The Searchers, he's just amazing. Now, I don't know if his age had anything to do with it as well. I think he was
61.
How old was? Yeah, he was in his 60s, and
Yep.
I heard somewhere that he had not too long before had one of his lumps removed and part of the other before playing that role. So I don't know if he just didn't have the energy and the stamina to really, really pull it off.
Right.
But I don't know.
Well, you brought up the fill your hand, son of a bitch, and I think John Wayne delivered that line better. I mean, I think it's just his facial expression before he does it that sells it for me. And don't get me wrong, I've been looking forward to 2010 True Grit for ever since they announced it, but there's certain points in the older one that I like, and that's probably the top one for myself that you can't beat is that scene. But getting on to other actors, were you guys surprised at all, or how'd you feel about Dennis Hopper's performance? How'd you feel about Robert Duvall's?
Right.
Also, Wilford Brimley was in this. He was uncredited, but it was one of his first roles was in True Grit as well.
I didn't see him. I knew that when I was watching the movie, but I didn't notice him. Did you see where he was?
No, I didn't.
he was making the oatmeal, I think.
Talking about the betas?
Yeah.
Talking about the betas? Betas.
Oh my god!
So, I mean, to me, when I went back and rewatched it, not this time, but the other times that I've seen it, back when I really started getting into film, I saw Robert Duvall. I'm like, oh my God, it's Robert Duvall, and saw Dennis Hopper. Holy crap. You know, it's just weird seeing those guys young, considering our generation grew up with them as, you know, in their mid to later life. So, did you guys like Robert Duvall as Ned Pepper?
I thought he was all right, but again, did they have dry cleaners in the Old West? Because like all of their clothes were so clean,
Yep.
and their shirts were pressed. And I know these guys apparently have been writing for weeks and weeks, you know, without stopping. But they all looked, in the older version, they all looked really nice. For a movie called True Grit, there was a surprising little amount of grit.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Go ahead, Sam. Oh, no, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I think there were some really good performances in the older version, but I don't think that the director chose to focus in on them. That, just like John Wayne is a star, a lot of the other performances and characters, even if there was some really good work, I don't think that's what people were watching, and certainly it wasn't what the director was focusing on.
Okay. Well, with that, go ahead, Gabe.
I was just going to say, I didn't even realize it was Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
Until there was a close-up, and then I was like, "Hey, wait a minute, that's Dennis Hopper." And I thought he was okay. I mean, he didn't come across as like stereotypical Dennis Hopper.
Well, he's missing fingers in this one, just like in Speed.
Right. Well, that's why they cast him in Speed.
Exactly. They're like, I've seen True Grit. This job's for you.
Right. Yeah. Right. They really cut your fingers off.
Right before we go to your guys' choices, John Wayne didn't get along with Robert Duvall during the filming, and at one point he threatened to punch the young method actor if he argued with the director again. So, apparently Robert Duvall got on John Wayne's nerves. Apparently a lot of people got on John Wayne's nerves during the filming. So let's go ahead. We'll start with, let's go to Tom.
2010 by a mile.
All right. Gabe.
Agreed. 2010.
Mark.
I feel like I'm on. I can't even talk. I feel like I'm on an island. I'm going to go at 1969.
Do you feel lost, Mark?
I do feel lost.
Mr. Twomey.
2010 by far.
All right. Well, let's get right into it then. Directing was brought up a lot. Let's get right into our directing category. We'll start off with let's go to Tom.
Well, I thought the directing in the first one was, I mean, it was serviceable. It told the story very well. But boy, I don't know if it was me, but the editing was really off. I mean, people would get shot, and then like 2 seconds later, they would fly backwards, and it just, a lot of the stuff seemed really kind of dicey. Whereas the directing in the new one, for me, it was everything really was concise, and I couldn't believe that the new one was shorter than the older one.
How much shorter is it?
8 minutes, I think.
8 minutes, okay.
And that's including credits, and the credits in the John Wayne one are much shorter. So you're probably looking at 10, 12 minutes shorter in the newer one. But the Coen brothers tell pretty concise stories. They don't usually hit 2 hours very often with their stories, because they tell their story and every shot has a purpose and everything's framed in a certain way to help tell the story. And I certainly got that. And then real briefly to touch on like a production design thing, that was like the most well lit Old West I've ever seen in my entire life. Like when they were in the boarding house, I mean that place was lit up like like a ballpark. It was ridiculous, and I just, for a period piece for me, that thing with the clean clothes and lots of lights, it's like, you're supposed to be taking me back to this period and understand what these kind of conditions these people were in, and I didn't get that at all.
Well, one thing I noticed a lot was, I mean, let's face it, the cameras nowadays are just just leaps and bounds ahead of the cameras back then. And I mean, you can tell where they're using daylight and making it look like dark, or there's a lot of scenes in the '69 version that are broad daylight, and you're like, well, wait, it's supposed to be night, and they just
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it was a sign of the times back then. They couldn't light it the way they wanted to light it, or maybe it was just the way they did things.
Right, and I caught that, some of the overexposure things, and obviously, I mean, I'm not going to be naive. We're in 2011. We are standing on the shoulders of every person that's ever made a movie before us. Okay, and they don't have the benefits of all the people that have made movies between '69 and 2011, which is a very remarkable period in film. But turn off a couple of the lights, for crying out loud! It looked ridiculously fake, and it just drove me nuts.
I have to agree with you, Tom. I have to agree. Let's go ahead. We'll go with Sam.
Tom's absolutely right. We've had all these advances, and they were standing on that. But I think more than just the evolution of the technology, I think was the very detailed selection of what parts of technology to use to make a complete a new complete film. I know there's just so many things about the 1969 version that, regardless of, the cameras weren't as good, and, they didn't have nearly the same kind of a budget, and blah, 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 blah. The look of it just felt like it was kind of put together fairly fast, which, as you said, with the 1968 book, they had to turn this film around fairly quickly. The director had directed previous westerns, so I don't see it as some new person not knowing how to shoot that kind of a western type look to it. Maybe I was just so enamored with the 2010 version and the beauty of those scenes and the look of it and the overall package, everything from acting to casting and everything like that. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like I'm hating on the 69 version, but this is one of those times that I feel that a remake was actually it was a good project to remake, because they could shoot it a little bit better. They could expand the story and not necessarily make it just about John Wayne, which I really firmly believe that this was really kind of his star vehicle, and it was about John Wayne, and he had a huge insight into the way it was shot, the way that it looked, and his performance. And when I put that against the 2010 version, I see a more artistic telling of the story. It has more heart to it, and as an audience, you're taking from areas of light and darkness. Like when you're in the dark of night, you feel it, and you feel some of the darkness in the character of the girl that is searching for the killer of her father, and that darkness and isolation is matched by what we see on screen. Whereas, the first one had some of the same story elements, but because of the way it was lit and shot and some of the locations, I didn't feel that sense of, that being the scenery being a character as well. It comes down to, it's John Wayne. I said earlier, talked about the focusing on the characters, which is, it goes hand in hand with the Coen brothers. That's one of their styles, is they're able to show on film the intricacies of these very diverse characters. And to me, that was a real joy, and why I really believe that the directing category would again go to the 2010 version.
Okay. All right. Mark?
Oh boy, where do I start? Well, let me like in football, where the running back's only good as his offensive line. I believe a director or directors are only as good as their cinematographer, and Roger Deakins is like the only quote unquote Hollywood cinematographer that I can tell you by name, and he did an incredible job on this film. And that scene that happens at night, where the gang sort of gets the jump on LaBeouf's character, and was it Cogburn is far away, and you see him get the jump on him. There's just an eerie presence to that. It was completely dark. You could really just see the shadow and the outlines of the characters and what was happening. But it was so, I was just so drawn into that image in a way that the 1969 version couldn't do for me at all. It was, I don't know. It's like night and day. I mean, it's like I can't even. I don't even know where to begin with those comparisons.
Well, it was literally night and day.
Right. Oh, yeah. It literally was. Now, I mean, I'm going to pick the 2010 version on the directing, but my issue with the Coen brothers here is that I almost wish they would have maybe stretched the material further than they did, further away from the 1969 version. Like, I don't feel like they made it their own that much. I mean, they didn't. I don't feel like they did much above and beyond standing the shoulders of everyone who's made a movie in the last 40, 50 years. I mean, they took all those elements and applied them to True Grit. But I guess I kind of like to have seen them do something a little more quirky. I guess I've seen so many Coen brothers movies, and there's always these one or two characters that just seem just generally odd. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're just like, what movie did this character wander in from? You know, and I don't know. I was just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't know if anyone else had that experience. Like, I was waiting for, Javier Bardem from No Country for Old Men to wander into a scene for whatever reason, just to stir things up a little bit. I mean, it's kind of like, if Michael Bay did My Dinner with Andre, and it's just two guys sitting in a restaurant. Only it's really well done. With it's got great performances, but you walk out and you're thinking, well, I was waiting for all the extra camera angles and explosions and stuff like that, and it didn't quite happen. So that kind of cloud hung over this experience for me because of the names under the director credit. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess those are my rambling thoughts about that.
All right, Gabe?
Yeah, well, these guys have covered a lot of ground with this stuff, and I agree with much of what they said. I really think that the directing is just, there's really no contest between the two. The Coen brothers are just so good at what they do. And the 69 version, it was really strange. Tom was saying that there were a lot of kind of like he didn't like the editing. And I didn't like it either, because I noticed a lot of really kind of maybe minor but very kind of noticeable continuity errors. Like just when they cut between shots, it's like, well, his hand was up here in the first shot, and now it's down here in the next shot, and there was no way for it to get there in that amount of time logically. And it just, the editing was definitely not careful at all. It was really just very sloppy, and I think you can attribute a lot of that to the directing. I mean, I think that in many cases the directors have a lot of input into the editing, and I just felt like the editing was just sloppy in the 69 version, and and the Coen brothers. One thing that I noticed about the Coen brothers recently, while they really do develop great characters. And they spend a lot of time on that, on the nuances of those characters and the nuances of their performances. But one thing I've noticed recently is that the endings of their movies are largely unresolved, in a traditional sense anyway. You don't feel the normal kind of ending that you expect in a movie. I mean, and I know we're all filmmakers and we're all looking for, interesting new ways to do things, but I think in the end we all kind of want a movie to conclude in a certain fashion. You want the hero to prevail. You want everything to be neatly tied up, unless of course there's going to be a sequel.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of the more recent Coen Brothers films haven't done that. No Country for Old Men. The ending was very controversial because it doesn't feel like it was tied up. It didn't feel finished, and then it ended. And I felt the same way about True Grit. The ending was in many ways unsatisfying. Maybe more plausible, maybe more realistic, but still kind of unsatisfying, because he takes her back to get worked on after she's bitten by the snake, and then he's not there when she wakes up, and she never sees him again, and we never see him again, and we just hear these rumors that he was joining this traveling show and that he died, and she placed him in the family plot. And granted, like Sam was saying before, the newer version of the story is more about her and less about Rooster Cogburn. But it still felt like unsatisfying for him to just kind of disappear to me. And so that's the only thing about the Coen brothers directing that I don't know if it bothers me, but I don't know how I feel about it. It really feels unresolved.
Right. Well, I've kind of looked up Henry Hathaway's filmography here, and the films he directed. Holy crap! Like, he started back in 32 and went clear to 74. So just imagine everything that he was there to witness, like, you know, black and white, color, and then all these different style changes, and I agree. Like, the editing for me as an editor was killing me in the 69 version. Like, there were a lot of shots that could have been it shortened.
Right.
There was a lot of just hanging on, but back then that's kind of the way they did things. Now, I'm not saying go all Michael Bay style on it. You know, not a lot of people can set up six different camera shots, you know, for one scene. But Henry Hathaway worked with John Wayne in at least, I think, 4 films. And one of them is my favorite John Wayne film, where he shows kind of his acting chops. Now, we've talked about The Searchers, which is probably my number 2, but my number 1 is North to Alaska. And it's just a comedy. It's a John Wayne comedy. And he's actually pretty funny, and I think you kind of saw that kind of... I think you saw the director trying to get him to do some more of his comedical timing in the 69 version. But then also I go and I look at the Coen brothers, the films they've directed, and holy crap, like Miller's Crossing and Lady Killers was horrible, but Intolerable Cruelty I loved, Man Who, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, and come on, Big Lebowski.
Hold up, Intolerable Cruelty? Are you serious?
Yes.
Huh.
Yep.
I guess that came out the same day as Kill Bill Volume 1 did, and I guess in comparison, I was just a little underwhelmed with the Coen brothers that day.
Well, no, don't get me wrong. It's not a really good Coen brothers movie, and I just... I don't know. There was something about it that kind of made me like it, but, you know, then there's the top of them all, which is Raising Arizona, and I don't know. It just seems like they're 2 different generations, and you have a screen legend in one, and you have 2 directors that, and I don't know how you guys feel, but whenever they bring something out, I'm like, I'm going to go see that. I don't care who's in it because it's directed by the Coens. You know, they're kind of, I wouldn't say living legends yet, but I mean, they're kind of looked up upon in the film community. So, with that being said, is there anything you guys would have done different?
Yeah, I got something that would be different. In the
for either film. Yeah, for either film.
In the 69 version, Maddie would have lost her arm because there's this wonderful... I'm watching both of them. I'm just kind of like trying to figure out, it's like, why is the story, you know, what is the artistic merits of this story that's made it endure this long? And Maddie goes out on this revenge to track down, you know, Cheney, and she finally gets the gun and she finally gets to shoot him. And the result of that shot kills him, but at the same time, it sends her backwards into the snake pit where she gets bit and she loses her arm, and she literally has to carry that event with her for the rest of her life, you know. And it's and it was fantastic. The Coen brothers, they didn't soften it at all. The fact of the matter is, that that's something that will be with her, and until she dies. And it was so poetic. The way the two. These events had brought the two of them together, and then finally this one gun blast set them both in opposite directions to their various fates. And when I had saw that the 69 version had softened that, and that she gets to keep her arm, and that she gets to continue on more or less, as a happy-go-lucky gal, I was so disappointed that they dropped the ball on that.
Okay, Gabe.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That I can agree with that. Let me see. What would I change? Like I said, I felt like it. The way Tom described that, it makes me kind of rethink my thought about it being unresolved. But I think I might have done something slightly differently at the end of the 2010 version, and resolved it a little bit more. But I'm not quite sure what it would have been. I think maybe her at least seeing him one more time before he passed or something would have been more satisfying to me as a moviegoer. And maybe it's not the most eloquent or poetic or artistic way to end it, but I have to admit there's that part of me that kind of wishes that she would have seen him one more time. And I would have liked to have known, like, what happened to LaBeef as well, because that seems really kind of ambiguous too.
Right, because he died in the 69 version.
Right, which was very clear that wasn't ambiguous at all. But in the 2010 version, he again, he's just kind of gone. They ride off and he's gone, and she never sees him again. And so I think I would have maybe modified the ending slightly, but I don't know. Maybe that would not have been a good choice, but that's probably what I would have done.
All right, Sam?
I think probably in the 2010 version, maybe a very, very slight modification on the end. I think most of the people reviews that I've read that people have hate the new. Some people really don't like the new ending because they think it cheapens that character that he was part of this, Wild West type show. Maybe something as simple as one scene showing him as an older man, even though he was broken and in this Wild West show or what have you, that the lessons that he had learned with Maddie really had helped change him as a person. And even though he was still really rough and grumbly, that the memories of that adventure had stayed with him as much as we believe they had stayed with her. But I don't know. I don't think I could do much more on the 2010 version. I think they did an incredible job, and it was so hard because they had to live up to the legend of John Wayne in the original. Mm-hmm. And even before you roll frame one on that camera, you have all of those expectations to live up to, and that's pretty tough.
Right. Okay, Mark?
I'd say I kind of pick my spots between the endings of the two films, I think, because, I mean, the ending of the 2010 is more poetic, like Tom was saying, but that fact was neutralized by the fact that she visits, like, carnies to, like, pay tribute to Roster Cogburn, and that didn't quite click with me. So, and I like the 69 ending where she's like, this is where I want to be buried, and I'd like to have you, buried alongside of me. I thought that was a very tender and very sweet moment, and then he rides off, and maybe that was a little too Hollywood. I guess I agree with the idea of her visiting him one last time before he died, and they could sort of reminisce and talk about the life lessons they've learned over that time. But I don't know. I think it would have been cool to make it in the modern day. I think there's so much. I don't know. There's such a soft perception about America and our culture these days. I think it would have been fun to see like a Rooster Cogburn character in the present day, going about his business the same way John Wayne did in the era that the book took place. So I don't know. I don't know how you do that, conceptually, but I think the Coen Brothers could have taken it there, and they didn't. And maybe I placed my expectations way too high on the Coens for this film. Like, I guess I expected to be knocked out of the park, and it just seemed, of all the Coen Brothers movies, it felt the least like a Coen Brothers movie. Like, you would have taken the credits off and said it was directed by Sam Mendes instead, I would have completely bought that. So maybe that's, I don't know. I've got so many hang-ups about these
Mark,
films.
it's kind of
I don't know where to start.
It's kind of scary on how you and I think alike sometimes. Like, I was actually thinking about that while we were watching the 2010 version. I'm like, I wonder what this would be like in, modern day storytelling. Like, I really kind of wanted to see that. And hopefully no one does that, like a McG or a Yui Ball. Hopefully we don't see something like that. But all right, so let's go ahead and we'll tally up the vote. I think I know how it's going for directing, but Sam?
2010.
All right. Tom?
Coen Brothers.
Gabe?
Ditto.
And Mark?
10.
All right. All right, that's saying a lot right there. Before we go on to the last category, I want to bring something up. Tom, the first time I ever went and saw a movie with you, we sat through and waited for the negative cutter. Right?
Yeah.
Like you always do that no matter what. You watch the credits. and the reason I bring this up, did you notice that Matt Damon had an ad double?
Did he really?
Or an ab double. I said ab. Ab, as in stomach abs.
No, I did not notice that.
Yes.
I didn't think they were going to give me credit. That's fantastic.
Well, the Coens are, they always put these little goofy nods in their credits. Whether it's the fictional editor, like Mark was bringing up, Roderick James, or the nod to Prince in the Fargo credits. They actually gave it to Buster Coen, who is actually the 15-year-old son of Ethan Coen. And
nice.
Buster was working on the set as the assistant to the script supervisor. But as Damon stated, they didn't think that title sounded very cool, so his dad and uncle asked him what he'd like to be credited as, and he came up with Ab Double. So there you go.
That's awesome.
I didn't know if you had noticed that when you were sitting through. Like, I was too busy talking to everyone else, but I didn't know if you had seen that.
No, that one had completely got past me.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. We'll move on to our fourth and final category, overall. If the bell will play. Yeah, there you go. All right. We'll start with. Let's start with Mark.
I feel like I'm going to be very alone in my final thoughts here, but I got to go with the 1969 version. The idea. I guess when I think of the title True Grit, I think of the Rooster Cogburn character, and I know the 2010 version is focused around the girl, and that's done really well. But I feel that's almost like burying the lead, and I like the Duke's performance. I feel like it carries the film. I know the lighting's bad, the editing's bad. Most of the performances are inferior. But when I'll go to war with the Duke in my corner over Jeff Bridges any day. I'm probably all alone on this, but I'm going to go with the 1969 version.
All right. That's kind of a shocker for me, Mark, I have to say. Let's go ahead. We'll go to Sam.
Well, I do disagree with you, Mark, and some of it may come from the fact that the 2010 was the first version that I saw. So my first attachment to the story and the characters came to the 2010 version, and so when I watched the 1969 version, it to me was an inferior product. And I get all of the Americana and John Wayne and the Oscar and all that, but having watched the two, if someone hadn't seen one, I would show them the 2010 version because I think it epitomizes terrific performances, great cinematography, and a sweeping scope. We didn't talk exclusively about cinematography, but I thought the work in this piece was just amazing. It's what I wanted to see when I go to the movies, that sweeping feeling, and the scenery acted as another character, and it was a damn good one. And so I have to say the 2010 version by far.
All right. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, it's really no contest in my mind either. The 2010 version is in so many respects far superior. And I think it's interesting, Sam, that you talk about the scenery and that kind of thing. And I felt exactly the same about No Country for Old Men. The scenery and at times the sound were their own characters, and I think they brought that into their version of True Grit as well. There's just so much good stuff in the new version. It's hard to even with my mom being a huge John Wayne fan and me growing up with John Wayne movies and all that, it's hard to side with the 69 version.
All right, Tom.
To touch real briefly on the Roger Deakins stuff, I was really excited to go into the new True Grit and see Deakins' work in this after seeing Assassination of Jesse James. His work in that movie is one of the most beautiful films I have ever seen in my entire life. I was disappointed that it was only 2.5 hours long, because every shot was so beautiful, and for some reason I felt like he was kind of pulling back a little bit in the new one. And maybe that was to help service the story a little bit. And there were very sweeping shots, and it was all very beautiful. But it wasn't in the same realm as Jesse James was. That being said, obviously, I prefer the new True Grit. I think that one was much better overall. But I went and I tried to figure out in the context of time when the original True Grit came out in 1969. And for those of you who don't know, 1969 was this very landmark year for the Western genre in films. And what you had that in that one year, True Grit came out, and within a couple of months, The Wild Bunch came out, Sam Peckinpah, and then within a week after that, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid came out. And I was really kind of floored because I can't imagine sitting there in the summer of 1969 and seeing True Grit, Butch Cassidy, and Wild Bunch, the latter two, which redefined Western films to this day. Wild Bunch with its very graphic violence, and Butch Cassidy with its commentary on, the West is disappearing and Western as a genre is almost dead. That I think that the people who made True Grit came out and they probably saw those two and were just like, we're kind of old bananas here. And even beyond that, Easy Rider came out in '69, which kind of redefined the Western, road flick. Midnight Cowboy even has some commentary on, people from the West and coming to the big city, and how as urban America started encroaching on rural America and vice versa. And so it really struck me that True Grit is seen as this very classic Western, when in fact the very week that it came out, within a month, it was out of date, and that it seems like it belonged a decade or two before when it came out, and it must have just seemed very disappointing. And so even with that, I definitely liked the new one more, and it was very surprising that True Grit has endured all this time, the original, after being put up against Butch Cassidy and Wild Bunches and movies that changed Westerns as we know them.
Right. Well, being a kid that was raised on horseshit and Gunsmoke movies, much kind of like Gabe probably was if his mom is such a freak about John Wayne movies. I love Westerns. Like, I think that is the iconic American cinema, is a Western film. And back in the 50s and 60s, even in the 40s and 30s, those were like a dime a dozen. And now, it feels really good to say that when a Western gets made, it's usually really well done nowadays, because it's kind of, it's kind of I don't know. People don't make them anymore. Back in the 40s and 50s, you could walk down the street and find any theater. It was probably showing 2 or 3 westerns at the same time. And nowadays, you have your Tombstones, you have your Jesse James, you have your new True Grit, and I think we're kind of lucky to see that, in the fact that there's a lot of filmmakers out there trying to do a great job, and maybe not looking at it as another paycheck. I'm not saying that Henry Hathaway was, but I'm just saying that a lot of the westerns back then was just, oh well, I need to feed my kids, so I'll just go ahead and make it. So I'll ask you guys this before we tally everything up and move on with the end of the show. I don't know how many westerns you guys have seen, but if there was one western that you could remake, which one would it be? Don't
there's that surprise question.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, Mike, there's 2 kinds of people in this world: those with guns and those who dig. You dig, and so I'd remake a Fistful of Dollars, I think.
Very nice. That'd be a hard one to top, Mark.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gabe.
Oh, I don't know. I was just thinking that's a good choice.
Now we've seen Sons of Katie Elder remade into is Mark Wahlberg. Can't think of it.
Four Brothers.
Yes, thank you. Another John Wayne movie that was made, a western made into modern times, which I watched it and it wasn't that great. So, what about you, Sam? Sam, Gabe, Tom?
Western is one of those categories that I really haven't watched a lot of westerns. It's something I think I'm going to get into in the next several years, is continuing to go to new genres of cinema. The one that I really do remember that watching with my father and that really struck me was High Noon.
Right
I think
on.
It could be an interesting twist.
Right on. Gabe?
Boy, that's tough. I'm trying to think. I've seen several westerns, and I agree with you, Mike, in that I love westerns, actually, and I don't know why people don't make more of them. They're such a great venue for the whole kind of morality play type of storyline, and I really just enjoy watching them. Although maybe I haven't seen enough to decide which one I would remake. Because a lot of the ones I've seen are more of the modern ones. They're really, really well done ones. God, it would be so hard. Boy.
I'm just real quick. I need to rescind mine and make that The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I got those films mixed up.
I wondered.
I didn't
about
even
that.
catch you. So
The second it came out, I'm like, oh crap, that was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, that line was from that. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Gabe. Sorry.
That would also be a very good one to remake, though. Boy, does Tom have an answer? I don't have one yet.
Tom?
If I did it, it would be more of a study of the original and learning kind of the techniques and stuff that they used. But I'd probably go way back to the 1900s and redo The Great Train Robbery, which was one of the very first films ever done. And my goal, I think, would be there's a scene where the bandit points the gun at the camera and fires it, and there were instances where people literally thought they had been shot because this was their first experience in a movie theater. And I would like to try and recreate that same kind of emotion out of people in The Great Train Robbery. But the new classics that they have out now, The Proposal or the Proposition, Lonesome Dove, Jesse James, Silverado. I mean, it's like you said, that if you put out a Western now, it better be good.
Yeah. Yep. You got a lot to live up to,
Absolutely.
For me, I'm going to have to go back to The Searchers. Like, I agree with Tom. I agree with Tom that, it would almost have to be a study. It would just, I wouldn't want to try and remake it shot for shot, but I mean, that is just, it's beautiful. My favorite scene, probably in any Western, besides the "Fill Your Hands, You Son of a Bitch," would be when John Wayne and his counterpart are sitting in the forest and it's snowing and it's just lit. In my opinion, perfect.
Yeah.
It's just such a beautiful scene, and I agree. Like John Wayne kind of showed his acting chops there, and I don't know. I think it'd be kind of interesting to kind of put a modern twist to it, but once again, that could go down the whole McG Yui Ball route.
What is your deal with Mick G? I gotta know.
Oh God, I
don't like Charlie's Angels, but
I don't really like a guy named McG. But I don't know if anyone else listens to Full Body Cast, but I hate, and I can say this, I hate Yui Ball, and I'm glad he's out there because it makes me not want to be a filmmaker like him, and it gives me something to say. Okay, if I can do better than him, I've done a great job. I don't know. It just seems to me like they always go out and try and grab whatever, and then I don't know. They just hurry up and make a movie. Like they don't try anything new. They don't try to better themselves. They don't try to. I've heard so many filmmakers say, every film you should be trying to remake yourself. You should be trying to better yourself, either visually or getting more out of the actors, or I don't know. It just seems to me like McG and Yui Ball are kind of always at the bottom, and I'll even throw in I think his name's Tim Story, the guy who directed the Fantastic Fours and Barbershop, and I can't think of his name now. Who's the one that ruined X-Men? Brett Ratner. There you go.
Oh, yeah, he did the third one. Singer did the first two.
Yeah. No, Singer's awesome. Yeah, Brett Ratner. Ugh. Yeah, bad. So, what were you going to say, Tom?
I was going to say if his name wasn't Nick G, would he move off of your hate list?
Possible.
Here's the thing. Charlie's Angels, yeah, they suck. They were really bad. Everybody knows that. But I didn't have a problem with Terminator Salvation. I mean, the franchise had kind of run its course, and I was like, there's one more, robot people movie. And I thought the gas station action scene was really easy to follow what was going on. I just, Michael Bay's movies, they just move so damn fast. And it's just like metal flying everywhere, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on. But
no, maybe
I'm showing my age, but I thought his action scenes were pretty good. I mean, if you're going to blame anything for Terminator 4, it was the writing. But Charlie's Angels.
Okay,
Charlie's
you
Angels.
called my bluff.
Charlie's Angels. I'll give it.
I kind of like Terminator Salvation. I enjoyed it. It wasn't horrible by any means, but yeah. Okay, we're getting kind of off topic.
Yes, we are. Sorry, I apologize.
All right, so. Here, this should come as no surprise, but I'm going to play it anyway.
And the winner by decision, 2010, True Grit.
Oh, you got people booing. Was that Mark?
Who's booing?
There were people booing.
Those bastards.
It was John Wayne's estate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Could hear him down in.
It was Winterset, Iowa.
Yep. So there you go. 2010, they won 13-3. Mark, you were the only one that voted for the 69, which
there you go.
Took courage and really surprised me because
it took true grit.
It did. It took true grit, Mark.
Was it about 2010? I was really disappointed because it was supposed to be the year we made Contact, and that didn't happen. So that Arthur C. Clarke's full of shit as far as.
So's that John Lithgow.
Yeah.
All right, so you can join us next week. We actually have this figured out ahead of time. Not next week, but next month, when we give you kind of an Oscar / Valentine's Day episode, where we watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and we pit it up against Moonstruck. It's our whole moon and sun thing. I don't know who came up with that. I think it was Sam, wasn't it? Was it you, Sam?
Was.
Sure.
Sam gets credit, unless he doesn't want credit.
That's all good.
I think Sam's asleep. So if you want to follow along with us, watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, watch Moonstruck, and then figure out who's going to win this battle that's going to be up in February. But before we go, I want to thank my fellow co-hosts, Mr. Sam Twomey, Mr. Mark Johnson, Mr. Gabriel Rowald, and last but not least, Mr. Tom Haggis. Thank you, guys. I had a blast once again, as usual.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And then I want to give you guys a chance to maybe say a few words. So let's start with Tom.
Well, I want to make a recommendation for everybody. Everybody's out there is kind of talking about The Town and realizing that Ben Affleck is a much better director than an actor. And I would recommend a film from a couple years ago called Gone Baby Gone. It is fantastic. It's so good. The story is so well placed, and I mean Ben Affleck for his first movie just hits it out of the park. So I tracked down Gone Baby Gone, and then followed up with The Town, which is also good. So we'll see if it gets a nomination here in a couple weeks for Best Picture. And if you want to know who's going to get Best Picture nominations, you can check out OscarRadar.com. I got an awesome new graphic up there. It looks like a little airport radar telling which direction the movies are coming and going and who's going to get nominated and who isn't. You can also follow me, Oscar Radar, at Twitter.
All right, Mark.
Oh, you know what? I always sound like I'm starting stuff off like, oh boy, here we go. But that's a good segue into my pick, which is, in my opinion, a true Coen Brothers movie. It was their previous film, 2009's A Serious Man. It's nominated for Best Picture, Best Writing, and just Best Writing and Best Picture. A lot of people have made movies about growing up Jewish in the 60s in Bloomington, Minnesota, but I feel like Coen Brothers' entry into that genre really kind of stands out. But no, this poor guy, Larry Gopnik, in this film goes through the most unreal set of trials and tribulations, and there's just no way out for this poor guy. It's a great film. It's more of a dark comedy, which is what I'm used to from the Coen Brothers. And it has this character named Cy Abelman, which might have been my favorite movie character from 2009, because he's constantly in a state of sighing. He's like, he's essentially been sleeping with this poor guy's wife the whole time, and he comes into his house and says, "Yeah, we're gonna need you to move out and leave the TV and leave the couch because she really likes the TV." And he's just constantly in a state of sigh. And for some reason I just really related to that guy.
Now, isn't it loosely based on the Book of Job? Like it
that,
doesn't?
Yes.
Okay.
And boy, this guy goes through the ringer. If you've had a bad day and you feel like things can't possibly be any worse, watch A Serious Man, and this guy gets no breaks whatsoever.
All right, good call. Sam.
Good pick.
Well, my pick this week is actually the first film that I watched in 2011, and it's called Rampage. Basically, dejected by the futility of his own life, in a bitter small town, the resident, Bill, played by Brendan Fletcher, who's amazing, takes matters into his own hands by constructing a bulletproof outfit, picking up semi-automatic weapons, and attempting the largest killing spree ever seen. Now, this is written and directed by controversial filmmaker, not Mike's favorite, Uwe Ball. Oh. But this ultraviolet action film features jarring handheld camera work, original dialogue that was largely improvised by a fantastic cast. Brendan Fletcher is an incredible up-and-coming actor who gives a tremendous performance.
Are you messing with me, Sam?
You know what? I was actually on there when whatever you think, Mike. It's an amazing film.
All right.
It's streaming now on Netflix, and there's some scenes in it that are very visceral. That you can feel the anguish and the pain of both the people getting shot and also the person going on a rampage. It's a very different film. Check it out. It's streaming on Netflix. You won't be sorry you did.
I might check it out just because you said so.
I think you'll really enjoy it.
Right.
And the lead actor, Brendan Fletcher, is an amazingly talented actor. So please check that out. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can always find information on the 48-Hour Film Project at 48hourfilm.com/Des Moines. And you can get in touch with me there.
Right on. Mr. Rowald.
Well, I'm going to stick with the Western theme for my pick. I'm going to suggest that people see The Proposition. Tom mentioned it earlier, and I thought it was really a great modern Western. Actually, interestingly enough, it was actually set in Australia, so it's not an American Western, but it's definitely got that feel to it, and it's really well acted. Guy Pearce, and I can't remember his brother's, the actor who played his brother, but he is excellent. And it's the kind of thing where the characters, they're not clear cut. The bad guy in the movie, you kind of find interesting and compelling, and the good guy you find at times kind of questionable. And it really does play with kind of your feelings on these characters and the morality that they're supposedly representing. Right. And I really thought it was a well done film.
All right. Well,
I was just going to say. If anybody cares, I am on Facebook.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And I am a web developer, but I don't have my own website, which is ironic, perhaps. But maybe someday I'll be able to say, go to rowald.us and you'll be able to find me there.
All right, well, I'm going to recommend Tron Legacy. I've been waiting 20 years for a Tron sequel, and I finally got it, and I finally got to go see it opening weekend, and I loved it. If anyone is a fan of the Tron films, go see it. It was kind of funny that the two films I was looking to the most in 2010 both starred Jeff Bridges, and I don't know, came out at the end of the year, and I think it was a pretty big December for Mr. Bridges, which that can always be a good thing, I guess. Buys better Christmas presents. You can follow Cinesmack on Facebook and on Twitter, or you can follow Southsider Studios on Facebook, and or Twitter. So until next time, for Sam, for Mark, for Tom, and for Gabe, go out, watch some movies.
I mean to kill you in 1 minute, Ned, or see you hanged in Fort Smith at Judge Parker's convenience. Which'll it be?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Okay, but I mean, the 69 film was far superior because of, John Wayne's performance and his gravitas just carries the whole film.
Mark, you ignorant slut.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.